Because of an experiment being conducted in the Arctic, a Navy submarine became the prey of a terrifying creature that the crew had never expected. Until now, they had only heard stories and legends about such a beast. A little earlier, two geologists named Julia and Oscar were carrying out experiments by releasing explosives into the Arctic waters. Suddenly, Julia received a call from headquarters, warning her and Oscar to evacuate immediately as a dangerous storm was about to strike the area. Not far from them, a Russian submarine was also stationed. Its system was detecting high-intensity sound waves, though no one could figure out where the sound was coming from. At the same time, Julia's scanners also began showing strange readings, and soon her research camp started shaking violently due to the wind. Julia tried to quickly gather her research materials, but there wasn't enough time, so Oscar pulled her outside. They both jumped onto Oscar's snowmobile and rushed ahead. Meanwhile, the Russian submarine was receiving louder and louder noises. The crew even felt as though the ocean floor itself was rising. Alarmed, they began preparing to leave, but before they could act, something massive slammed into the submarine. The impact left the vessel badly damaged, and no one was sure if they would survive. The crew opened fire at whatever was outside, but their weapons had no effect because the attacker was a gigantic tentacle. With its next strike, a crewman inside the submarine was thrown across the cabin and knocked unconscious, despite being within the vessel. The submarine was on the verge of sinking, but just before that happened, a worker managed to release an emergency tracking device, a special tool used to transmit location signals in critical situations. At the same time, Julia and Oscar continued riding across the ice, which was rapidly cracking behind them. Eventually, the snowmobile was caught in the destruction and fell off a cliff. Luckily, Julia and Oscar survived the fall, but the vehicle was completely destroyed. From there, they witnessed their camp collapsing into the sea, killing many scientists still trapped inside. Shocked, Julia and Oscar began to believe that they too would not survive. Back at Russian Marine headquarters, news of the missing submarine had already reached officials. Since the lost vessel was carrying highly classified weapons, the decision had to be made whether to recover them or destroy them on site. A rescue mission was immediately authorized, and a new team was dispatched to the Arctic location. This team was led by Captain Victor, who insisted on joining the mission himself because his own brother, Alexander, was aboard the missing submarine. Determined to save him, Victor informed his mother, but she was filled with fear. Having already lost one son, she didn't want Victor to disappear like Alexander. Victor reassured her that he would bring his brother back. Moved, his mother gave him a watch that had belonged to his father, who had also served as a Marine but was killed during a mission. Later that night, Victor boarded the dock, where he met Admiral, an old friend of his father who was joining the mission. At first, Victor doubted whether the Admiral, given his age, should even take part, though he kept these thoughts to himself and entered the submarine. Inside, he noticed some soldiers were visibly angry since they had been called back from their leave just to participate in this mission. Meanwhile, Julia and Oscar were struggling through the worsening weather. Progress was nearly impossible, and their satellite phone had no signal. While searching for a connection, Julia nearly fell into a crevasse, but Oscar saved her. By chance, the phone regained signal for a brief moment, allowing them to contact a nearby oil rig and call for help. However, due to poor reception and the storm's deafening noise, the workers on the rig could barely understand Julia's voice. Before any proper communication could be established, the signal was lost again. Exhausted, Oscar fired a flare into the sky, and the two collapsed onto the snow. By morning, Victor's submarine had reached the location where the first vessel had disappeared. After diving deeper, the Admiral led Victor into a private room, where some of the officers had in their possession. Reports from before the submarine went missing were now surfacing, which left everyone deeply worried. Rumors began spreading inside the vessel that the old submarine was impossible to find. Still, since they were currently receiving a signal from the emergency tracking device, the crew decided to head toward it. Meanwhile, Julia and Oscar were still wandering through the snow. That's when Julia spotted the very same tracking device, drifting in their direction. Seeing it filled them with joy, because it meant someone would eventually come searching for it and perhaps save them too. Deep under the sea, Victor's submarine was advancing when suddenly, dozens of whales surrounded it, forming an eerie circle. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. Victor wished to pass through peacefully without harming the whales. But just then, one whale struck the submarine's rear. Concerned, the Admiral advised activating the sonar device. At first, Victor resisted, knowing the sonar could harm the whales, but with no other choice, he gave the order. As soon as the sonar activated, the whales scattered, but a little later, they returned to circle the submarine again. Nobody understood what was happening. Then, just as suddenly, the whales disappeared once more. Moments later, the technical crew detected a low-frequency sound nearby, though its source remained unknown. Without warning, a storm began rising above the seabed, and then, before their eyes, a giant tentacle lashed out, seizing a whale and crushing it in an instant. Panic struck everyone inside the submarine. The admiral immediately suspected the presence of an enemy and ordered fire. But since Victor had no confirmation, he refused to attack and instead commanded the submarine to retreat to safety. He maneuvered the vessel between two massive rock formations. But because the sonar device was still active, its frequency reverberated off the rocks, causing unbearable pain in the crew's ears. And with no passage ahead, the submarine was forced to stop there. Luckily, the monster withdrew. Still, the admiral was furious with Victor, believing his reckless decision had risked the entire mission and even damaged the vessel slightly. The submarine was later repaired, and the crew set course once again toward the tracking signal. Above the ice, Oscar and Julia huddled together for warmth near the device. Suddenly, Victor's submarine broke through the frozen surface, and Julia, relieved, explained their situation. Victor decided to help them, but the admiral suspected they might be spies. He suggested giving them food and leaving them behind. Yet, looking at the harsh conditions, Victor felt pity and allowed them on board. Once submerged again, the crew began scanning the surrounding waters. Julia and Oscar underwent medical checks, received food, and slowly regained strength. Later, Victor handed Julia a map and asked her to mark her camp's location. She explained that their camp had been completely destroyed. Russian headquarters had received the first signals from beneath that camp, which meant his brother's submarine might have sunk in the same place. Victor ordered the vessel toward the camp's waters. The admiral objected, warning that the submarine had already suffered damage once. If they faced the same situation again, survival was impossible. He urged ending the mission and heading back. But Victor ignored him and pressed forward. On the way, Oscar worked with the technical crew and discovered unusual frequency readings. Scanning the area revealed something massive was following them. Alarmed, Victor ordered the submarine to search for cover. But this time, they were in the middle of the open sea. There was nowhere to hide. The crew quickly contacted a nearby oil rig, asking permission to dock for a while. Permission was granted, and Victor ordered the submarine to surface. But before they could reach it, the creature attacked the rig first. Its enormous tentacles tore through the structure, horrifying the workers. The submarine lost contact with the rig, and when Victor looked back, his heart sank. The entire oil platform was wrapped and crushed by tentacles belonging to a colossal octopus, 4 times the size of their submarine. The rig was obliterated in seconds. After destroying the rig, the octopus turned its attention toward the submarine. Victor ordered full speed, causing chaos inside as equipment and supplies crashed about. The admiral, however, grew impatient with Victor's evasive tactics. He seized control of the submarine and commanded missile fire. 2 torpedoes were launched, and the admiral was certain they had killed the beast. But the octopus was unfazed. It charged at them with even greater fury. The admiral ordered more missiles to be fired, but even these had no effect. Panic spread through the submarine, and the admiral himself began losing control. The admiral seized control of the submarine and ordered it to accelerate at full speed. The Kraken attacked repeatedly, striking the vessel again and again. At first, the crew narrowly managed to dodge its assaults. But then, one massive tentacle slammed directly against the submarine, causing severe damage. The impact disabled several systems, and in the chaos, Victor was struck on the head and injured, along with several other crew members. The submarine began sinking deeper. Just then, the Kraken launched another devastating blow, which severely damaged the weapons room. A fire erupted inside, and the workers rushed to seal off the ventilation chamber to contain the flames. But before they could regain control, the monster revealed itself completely emerging in front of the submarine in its full, terrifying form. What they had mistaken for an octopus was in fact something far more dreadful, the Kraken, a legendary sea creature they had only ever heard of in myths, said to drag entire ships beneath the ocean centuries ago. Seeing it in real life left the crew in utter disbelief. With the beast so close, any attack would be suicidal. Thinking quickly, Victor ordered all systems on the submarine to be shut down. At first, nobody understood why he would make such a reckless choice. But the moment the power went off, the Kraken slowly drifted away and disappeared into the dark waters. Victor's strategy had worked. The creature had been tracking the submarine through its signals, and with no systems active, it could no longer detect them. However, shutting everything down made the fire in the weapons room worse. Thick smoke spread rapidly, suffocating the workers trapped inside. Several of them burned to death before help could reach. Watching his crew suffer, Victor made a painful decision. He prioritized saving lives over saving weapons. he ordered the survivors to evacuate the burning chamber. Some were injured while escaping, but their lives were spared. The pressure in the room was reduced, which finally allowed the fire to be extinguished. Meanwhile, Julia and Oscar tended to the wounded, earning the trust of the crew. Julia carefully treated Victor's head injury, and noticing this, one crew member teased her, saying her concern for Victor made it seem as if she had feelings for him. Julia quickly denied it, but the crewman reminded her that Victor had broken protocol to save her life earlier. Later, Victor gathered everyone to decide their next move. Most argued that they should return home. Their weapons were limited, the submarine was badly damaged, and they didn't even know the exact location of the missing submarine they were searching for. The admiral also reminded Victor of his late father, who had died a hero while saving his team during a mission. Hearing this, Victor reluctantly agreed to retreat. Sometime later, Julia entered a lower chamber and discovered birds in cages. Confused, she asked about them, and Victor explained that they were kept on board as natural sensors. If the birds became restless, it meant there was either a lack of oxygen or some great danger nearby. With that knowledge in mind, Julia pulled out a map and marked the locations where they had encountered the Kraken. She explained that according to old legends, the Kraken would drag ships into its lair at the bottom of the sea. Some scholars believed the creature was either extinct or in a deep slumber, but Julia suspected that when she had been testing explosives earlier, one must have accidentally struck the Kraken's cave, awakening it from its long sleep. Victor found her theory convincing. If the Kraken truly had a lair, it was likely near the site of the explosive testing, which also meant that the missing submarine would be there too. Just then, the technical team intercepted faint signals. It sounded like metal being struck, almost like survivors trying to send a message. To their shock, the signal was coming from beneath the exact spot where Julia's camp had been destroyed. This confirmed their hope. The missing submarine was indeed down there, and its crew might still be alive. Determined, Victor inspired his crew, reminding them that no matter the risks, saving even a single human life was worth it. Motivated by his words, the crew agreed to press on toward the dangerous waters. As the submarine advanced, Victor reflected on a moment from his past when he had once been lost in the mountains. And soon, their vessel finally arrived at the critical location. The submarine had now reached an area where the water pressure was so intense that even a few bolts inside the vessel popped out of place. Realizing the danger, Victor ordered the sub to rise slightly upward. That's when the crew discovered a massive trench nearby. The sight of it left Victor convinced. It had to be the Kraken's lair. Without hesitation, he decided to send a smaller submarine down for exploration. But since its pilot was injured, Victor took the responsibility himself. Handing over full command of the main submarine to the admiral, he prepared for the mission. Then, along with two companions, Victor boarded the mini-submarine and began descending into the dark trench. However, they couldn't afford to stay too long in such crushing pressure, so Victor accelerated the descent. Along the way, they saw countless wrecks of lost ships, long-forgotten vessels no one had ever recovered. This confirmed what ancient scholars and pirates had claimed all along. The Kraken had always been lurking in the depths, pulling ships into oblivion. Soon, Victor located the missing submarine. Though most of it was destroyed, one section remained intact, meaning survivors could still be inside. Fighting the water pressure, Victor maneuvered the mini-sub to dock with it. At first, it seemed impossible, but with persistence, he finally succeeded. Wearing diving gear, Victor entered the damaged submarine. To his shock and relief, inside were several surviving crew members, including his own brother, Alexander. Overjoyed, the men welcomed Victor, while news of the successful rescue brought cheers aboard the main submarine. Talking to Alexander, Victor learned that his brother's team had also realized the Kraken was hunting signals. So, they had shut down their systems and sent out only faint signals intermittently, hoping someone would notice. Though many survivors were alive, they couldn't all be evacuated at once. So, Victor chose to stay behind with Alexander while a pilot escorted some survivors back to the main submarine, planning to return for the rest. Before leaving, the pilot attached a tracker to the damaged submarine to ensure they could find it again, but since even the tracker emitted signals, they had to shut it down. Not long after, the mini-sub reached the main vessel, but Julia examined the pilot and realized his condition had worsened. He was too weak to return for a second trip. That's when Oscar volunteered. Skilled in piloting submarines and knowledgeable about their mechanics, he stepped in and headed back down. Meanwhile, the admiral detected signals indicating the Kraken was approaching. Panic spread quickly. At the same time, Victor, remembering his orders to either recover or destroy the weapons on the damaged submarine, decided with Alexander to destroy them. Together, they entered the weapons room and fed the source codes into the computer, activating the self-destruction sequence. but the system required manual activation at close range. Determined, Victor crawled through a series of pipes toward the control point. Back above, the Kraken had already reached the main submarine. One of its massive tentacles struck a nearby rock, which collapsed onto the vessel, causing major damage. With no other options, the Admiral ordered Oscar to take the survivors straight to the surface once rescued, while the main submarine itself prepared to ascend. But before they could rise, the Kraken surrounded them completely, ready to crush them. At that very moment, the mini-sub was attempting to dock again with the damaged submarine. In the process, the previously attached tracker accidentally switched back on, releasing strong signals. Picking up the trail, the Kraken abandoned the main submarine and turned toward its lair. As soon as Alexander realized the mini-sub had docked successfully, he instructed his crew to board it, while he stayed behind near the pipes, waiting to help Victor. One by one, the survivors evacuated into the mini-sub. Meanwhile, Victor and Alexander completed the manual activation, setting the weapons to self-destruct. A powerful explosion was now only moments away. Victor rushed out of the pipes, but outside, the Kraken had already wrapped its monstrous tentacles around the damaged submarine once again. However, since the weapons had now been activated, they began releasing immense energy. The Kraken's grip only made things worse. It amplified the pressure, causing a surge of raw power to flow straight through the creature's body. In an instant, a massive energy wave ripped through the Kraken, traveling upward all the way to the ocean's surface. The legendary beast let out one final thunderous roar before being obliterated once and for all. But the victory came at a price. The damaged submarine had started flooding rapidly. Seeing this, Alexander rushed to help his brother. Grabbing Victor's hand, he pulled him toward the mini-submarine. Just in time, before the water could engulf them, they sealed the hatch and detached from the doomed vessel. Moments later, the self-destruction sequence triggered. A colossal explosion erupted deep underwater, sending out a shockwave so powerful that it gave their small submarine a sudden speed boost, propelling it straight toward the surface. Above, the Admiral and Julia anxiously awaited any sign of life. Then, breaking through the waves, the mini-sub emerged. When Victor and Alexander stepped out alive, the entire crew erupted with joy. Soon after, they all returned safely to Russia, where Victor and Alexander's mother embraced her two sons, overwhelmed with happiness. And with that, Victor and Alexander finally put an end to the terror of the Kraken, proving that even in the darkest depths of the ocean, courage and sacrifice can light the way. Their return brought joy, relief, and a reunion that no one thought possible. But the question still lingers: are there more such creatures hiding beneath the waves, waiting for the right moment to rise? The ocean holds secrets we may never truly uncover. So, what do you think? Could the Kraken be real? Tell me in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, and if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling tales like this. Until next time, stay curious, stay adventurous, and I'll see you in the next story.
Pearl and Anna begin investigating the alien technology together. As they study the UFO, a sudden flash of blue light bursts out from it. To their astonishment, they realize the aliens are actively communicating about humanity. So, friends, this was today's story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends,